Hey everyone, and welcome to the Lazy Paddler Investors Show. This is part 3 of our spelunking trip deep into the annual report from Activision Blizzard. Today we're continuing our evaluation of the business section of the 10K. My name is Harlan Bea, and I'm here to help us all become better long-term investors. Before we get started, just a few reminders. I'm an individual investor, and these opinions are my own. I'm not speaking for any companies I work for or manage. I may own shares in most of the companies I'm going to discuss on my shows. So, therefore, I do not recommend that you buy or sell any of the stocks I discuss. Remember, always do your own research before you make decisions about your own investments. So, if you like this content, like this video, smash that subscribe button. It will let me know that you're interested and what to continue working on. Also, let me know in the comments whether you would be interested in a live stream of this particular content so that I can interact with folks as I work on these things. And let me know what companies you might want me to cover. I'm going to lean toward companies that I'm personally interested in, so companies that I'm invested in already, or companies that I want to buy, or companies that I'm thinking about selling. And I doubt that I'll go as deep into a 10K as I'm doing right now with Activision Blizzard for a while, but I definitely do want to get deep, and I'm going to continue making these long-form discussions, as many as I can with the time that I have. So, if this is something that you like, let me know in the comments below, and let me know what you want us to work on. So, with that done, let's get into the weeds. So we're continuing on page 7 of the Activision Blizzard 10K from 2020. Again, this is old news to some of you, but I doubt most people have actually read the entirety of the 10K. I'm probably going into this much deeper than most folks would. So let's keep going. And the reason why I like doing this, the reason why, is because it gives me a platform to discuss all kinds of different things, all kinds of different business concepts. It's not necessarily just because I think all of these paragraphs are particularly important for my analysis of Activision Blizzard. They're not necessarily, but it gives us a starting point to discuss various types of business concepts that you may want to think about as you're evaluating companies on your own. So, let's see. Marketing, sales, and distribution. Cool. Take a moment here and review. So they're talking about how a lot of their products enable them to both market and sell directly to consumers. So I know Battle.net will advertise for some of the games that are coming out, and I expect that things like the mobile games from King, particularly the ones that are free to play, will have advertising in them, and some of that advertising may be for their own games, maybe for other people's games. They're just summarizing here where they advertise. So online, public relations, print and broadcast advertising, stuff like that, in-store industry promotions. I've seen outdoor displays up in LA, not here in San Diego, but definitely up in LA. Cooperative advertising programs. I don't exactly know what a cooperative advertising program is. I wish they'd explain that a little bit. Direct response vehicles. I'm not exactly sure what that means. I guess it's like ads that you can click on. And product sampling. Okay. and sometimes they get marketing support from hardware manufacturers. Okay, so they're just talking about a lot of partners that they've got. Again, I want to kind of go back to this idea of what's in the future. What are they thinking about doing? It seems that they're leaning toward a lot of their own internal advertising as a way to get out the message. So the stronger their current products are, the more eyes will be drawn to their own locations where they can further make marketing, if that makes sense, right? So if you come out with a game and a lot of people like that game, they're going to be seeing your advertisements for your older games. Or if you have a long-standing game that people continue to come back to, maybe as you drop a new DLC or something like that, those people who are coming in are going to see the new games that are being advertised out there. So it creates a network effect. It's very much like it's it's the idea behind why there are trailers in front of popular movies, right? So this is essentially them advertising for themselves and their future products. Makes sense, and it builds on itself. Success builds on itself there. But they're also going out and they're advertising in other places. So, good. Okay. I think we might have covered some of this before. I don't have a whole lot to say about it. I'm not too worried that they're missing the boat in marketing and sales. I don't have any concerns about them not being able to market their products effectively. And I think that their existing plan can last them probably 10, 20 years into the future without problem. Okay. Manufacturing. We discussed this last time, I think, where they don't control all of the elements of the manufacturing process. They do have to license technology and hardware, and they pay royalties for those. This would be a concern if there wasn't a lot of competition in the marketplace. So if, for example, Sony became the dominant player and there was no more, and there were insignificant amounts of players over with Microsoft or Nintendo, then you have a problem, right? Because then you've got one manufacturer that's got too much pricing power. But with three major players in the market, including PC, which, I mean, Microsoft kind of has control over, but it's not the same as Xbox, right? So it's kind of like Steam and Microsoft with the Xbox, Sony with PlayStation, Nintendo with its systems, and some of the smaller systems as well. There seems to be a good ecosystem here. It's not so many that it's ridiculously difficult to program for. Like as you start increasing the number of platforms, it becomes a choice. You have to start deciding where you're going to land your product. But they've basically chosen the major players to market on, and that's how I would hope that they would go. And none of the major players right now have such a distinct advantage that they have outsized pricing power, I would say, over things like licensing and stuff. Okay, significant customers and top franchises. This is definitely something to pay attention to. When you have a company that has to divert most of its product through a single customer, through a single retailer, say Costco, who I do invest in, or Target, who I do not invest in, if they become your major retailer and all of your contracts are going through them, if you were to lose that contract, it would be a huge blow to your income, and you would be on the verge of bankruptcy, right? If you couldn't get someone to take care of that, it would be a major problem for you. You would have to lay off folks. You might have to go out of business. You might have to take bankruptcy steps. There are all kinds of problems that would come in if you were to lose a major contract like that. Now, in gaming, particularly between major players such as Activision and, say, Sony, again, who I don't invest in, not Sony anyway. I do invest in Activision Blizzard, by the way. Just want to make that clear. I think I do this in every video. I just want to make sure to remember it here. And that's the reason why I'm going through this, just because I'm considering divesting many, if not all, of my Activision Blizzard shares. I'm considering selling them. That's divesting, right? So typically with these big players in the marketplace, it takes a lot for them to get angry enough at each other to say, no, we're not going to work with you anymore. This does happen occasionally. And there was some recent kerfuffle with, I want to say, Apple and Epic. I'm not exactly sure what ended up happening there. Not what I want to talk about right now. Let's look at some of these customers here. So typically, Activision Blizzard doesn't sell directly to end customers in the instances, unless they're going through Battle.net. So Blizzard's Battle.net, they can sell directly to customers, and they can do that on PC, and that's great. So they probably even get a much higher, they get much higher margins, so they don't have to spend as much money to earn money through Battle.net, right? So they own Battle.net, so they don't have to pay, say, the Apple App Store or Microsoft's Xbox game store, or whatever they call it over there. I do invest in Microsoft, by the way. Let's just go through these real quick. Google I invest in. Apple I invest in. Microsoft I invest in. Sony I do not. Walmart I do not invest in. What else are we talking about here? Sony I do not invest in. Okay, cool. GameStop I do not invest in. I bought GameStop shares for like a day, and then I sold them immediately. Not something that anyone needs to worry about GameStop-wise. Okay. So when they go through Sony's PlayStation Store or Xbox Game Store or whatever, or any of these third-party folks, they have to pay a little bit, right? So the customer is paying them whatever, $60 for the game. Each of those vendors is going to take a cut. They're going to do it, regardless of, whether or not they're actually actively participating much in that process. They're going to take their cut. But when it goes through Battle.net, Blizzard of Activision Blizzard Company owns and manages that. So all they have to do is maintain that application. The cost of maintaining that application is enough, and they're not taking a cut for themselves. Or if they are, it's just accounting stuff going back and forth between the company. So it's no money gained, no money lost from our perspective as shareholders. So for the year ended December 31, 2020, Sony, Apple, Google, and Microsoft were our most significant customers, with revenues of 17% for Sony, 15% for Apple, 14% for Google, and 11% for Microsoft, respectively. Okay, cool. So, interesting information here. And this is actually, I'm going to add these up in my head right now real quick. Or maybe I'll use a calculator. Let's see. So if Sony is their most significant customer, 17% of their sales are going through Sony. I would have actually expected that Microsoft would have been a larger customer with its Xbox, but not quite. What is about 2/3 of the Sony, with 11% of sales, of revenues. Interesting. And then Apple, 15%. So I take it that Apple and Google, the 15% and 14% respectively, are mostly probably King Digital. Although I've got some good work that my intern Juan put together that I'll show later on that shows what some of the breakouts are of revenues from these different revenue streams. So we'll put that up on screen a little later and you can enjoy his graphs. But this is, let's see, 40% plus 49%, 50%, 50. So 57%. This represents 57% ish of 2021 revenues. So that means that the rest of their revenues are coming from some of those other places like your GameStops, your Targets, your Walmarts. I don't invest in Walmart. Your Costco's, those sorts of places, or they're coming through Battle.net. So we don't know necessarily where those things all are. They're not calling those out. I think what they're doing here is they're calling out all of the sources of revenue that are over 10%. Typically, that's a kind of a flag. Oh yeah, here we go. No other customer accounted for 10% or more of our consolidated gross receivables in those periods. So they're actually going back through 2019 as well, showing what these numbers were. It looked like, so we had two customers, Microsoft and Sony, that counted for 28% and 21% respectively of consolidated gross receivables. So the risk here, right? The risk is that Sony decides they don't want to do business with Activision anymore, or Microsoft decides they don't want to do business with Activision anymore. Would that be a huge blow to either Sony or Microsoft? Probably not, actually. Strangely enough, probably not. Would people be less likely to buy a PlayStation if they couldn't play Call of Duty, say, on it because Activision and Sony were in sort of Activision Blizzard and Sony were in some sort of legal battle? Yeah, probably. Like if you really want to play Call of Duty, you might decide to buy an Xbox. How many people are that dead set on it? I don't think that many. I don't see this as a huge risk either because these companies need each other so much. Sometimes there's some saber rattling that goes on, but I don't see this as a huge risk. There is definitely, there is definitely more of an issue with Sony leaving than Microsoft. Wait a second. So this says two customers, Microsoft and Sony, who counted for 28% and 21% respectively of consolidated gross receivables. Oh, they're switching terms. So this is revenues up here, and this is consolidated gross receivables. Oh my. Okay. Which I'm not even going to go into what the heck that means. Basically, receivables are things that Activision and Blizzard are owed. And so it gets tracked in a different way than revenues. And it's timing and when money is recognized as coming in, receivables. So you can have a receivable but not yet have received the revenues from those things. So that's why these numbers are going to be a little different than those. So revenues, they're basically, they're different. I don't know if revenues includes receivables. I'm not an accountant. I'm not going to try to make an accounting declaration here. I don't really know if these consolidated gross receivables are actually included in revenues. I don't think they are because they're things that you have been committed to receiving, but you haven't gotten them yet. Okay, let's move on down. So, top franchises. Oh, and by the way, receivables are a little bit riskier than revenues, obviously, because you don't have the money yet, right? There's a chance that those folks aren't going to pay back. But Microsoft and Sony, I mean, these two companies, Microsoft particularly, has a ton of cash on its balance sheet last time I checked. So I don't think they're in danger of not paying those receivables. And Sony, as far as I know, they're stable as well. I don't see any reason why they need. I don't see a risk in either of these two companies not being able to pay the receivables on time as contracted right now. That's something that could happen in the future, but I don't I don't see this as a major risk. Top franchises. Okay, so their top three franchises: Call of Duty, Candy Crush, World of Warcraft. Great. Fantastic to know. And this is critical to know. Oh, wow, I can't highlight it. So collectively, these three franchises accounted for 76%, 67%, and 58% respectively of our net revenues. So that is 2020's net revenues, 76%, 2019's net revenues, 67%, and 2018's revenues, 58%. No other franchise comprised 10% or more of net revenues in those periods. All right, this is a problem. I don't like this at all. I don't know if the World of Warcraft franchise includes Hearthstone. I don't think it does. I also don't know how the Candy Crush franchise shakes out. I don't know how many games are in it, but it bothers me that their franchises are starting to become so monochromatic. Monochromatic. This is not a broad and reaching sort of set of product offerings. They are choosing to do a few things very well, I guess. That's probably what they would say. They're choosing to do a few things very well. That can work for a while, but the problem with it is that franchises can come and go. People can get tired of franchises. And so I would be worried that if one of these franchises starts to turn down in popularity, they may not have something on the way up to take its place. It would make me feel much better if they had a more diverse offering of products. However, however, there are some companies that I own that I am happy are very tight and very focused in what their product offerings are. So, for example, in automotive manufacturing, some manufacturers will try to focus on lots and lots of different brands within their stable of cars that they produce. Others are very tightly focused, and they will only do some brands, and they may have particularized adjustments within each of those brands. But let me just talk for a second about how Tesla runs its business, because I invest in them. They have the Model S, the Model 3, the Model X, and the Model Y right now that are actively in production for their vehicles. I'm not going to talk about the rest of their business. It's too complex to get into right now. But these are the main vehicles that they manufacture, and most of their revenues, not profits necessarily, but most of their revenues come from the Model 3, which is the most widely purchased electric car in the world, I believe. Yeah. So really good stats for that, and they're very focused, right? So they have highly automated production line, and everything is sort of simplified down to bare necessities, and it enables them to contain their costs while also trying to control their quality and to give customers what they need on as fast a basis as they possibly can. Whereas other companies will try to do all kinds of different things. They'll have internal combustion cars, and they'll have maybe some trucks and cars and all kinds of different models and things. And it's a lot. It's a lot to manage. And it gets very complex, and it's difficult for customers to know really like what it is, what's the best thing, what to buy. You really have to go in and like do a lot of research on these various things, and it's I think difficult for those companies to manage. When you're working with video games, you have this same sort of idea where you can basically have a franchise where you know everybody's going to be getting, a particular type of car, and you just adjust that car every year. New model comes out, basically, right? The 2020, the 2021, the 2030, whatever. And so that's essentially what they're doing with Call of Duty, with Candy Crush, with World of Warcraft. Every time a new DLC drops, or every time a new version of Call of Duty drops, it's the same car under the hood. And it becomes the thing that you would get in that period. And you're probably not going to get the older things. And that helps them keep expenses down. They don't have to, reinvent things. They're not always trying to research and create new stuff. But games are very different than cars. So popularity of games, the switching cost, I guess I'm going to say, the switching cost is very high between cars. So if I'm going to change my car, I'm spending thousands of dollars or tens of thousands of dollars to switch my car. Even more with an electric car, where I have to maybe buy some sort of charging unit to put in my house, and or arrange for something like that to be installed in my apartment, right? So there's all kinds of stuff that has to happen. With a game, I can just get into a new game and stop playing an old game. It's not very expensive to buy a new game. It's not that expensive to put a new game on my machine and just say, all right, I'm gonna do this now. So grabbing and holding on to your customers and maintaining their hopes and dreams is really important. But gamers, just like folks, just like everybody, are looking for something new, and if you're not creating something new, and if you're driving people more and more to your key franchises, I'm worried that you're not going to be pushing enough toward what's next, what's coming. I'm worried that you're resting on your laurels, in other words. So this very tiny paragraph bothers me quite a bit. Okay, competition. I invest in Netflix, and so one of the things that they love to say over at Netflix during their conference calls is that we're competing with everybody. Netflix is competing with, going out and having a walk. They're competing with Disney Plus. They're competing with Activision Blizzard. They're competing with YouTube. They're competing with anyone who wants anyone's entertainment time. So when you look at something like this, remember that if you're investing in an entertainer, everyone's got X amount of time in a day, right? To devote to whatever it is that they want to do to entertain themselves. Film, television, social networking, music, all these things, they're competitors for a person's time. You're also competing for talent. So let's see what they say about that. Nothing. They compete for leisure time. They compete among software using product features, game quality, playability, brand recognition, compatibility to platforms, distribution channels, online capability, ease of use, price of content, marketing support, and quality of customer service. I guess this section really is about quality development, but they don't say it's about the developers. In addition to third-party software competitors, they've got integrated video game consoles. What are they talking about here? Oh, so they're basically saying that the folks that they contract with to advertise their games develop their own games, and they are competing with them directly on those platforms. And that is true. So they're at a disadvantage, right? So if Microsoft makes a game and then it sells it on its own Microsoft Xbox store, then they're essentially selling that game for free, right, on that store. Just like Activision Blizzard is selling their own stuff for free on Battle.net. So they're at a pricing disadvantage when they go to try to sell something on Microsoft's Xbox store. But I note that they don't say anything about competition for talent. And again, I'm going to harangue them for this. If you can't keep your talent happy by providing them a safe, comfortable working environment, if people believe that you do not respect diversity, the voices of women, if you have places where you're being sued by the state governments for poor allegedly poor practices in the office, where people are feeling like they're being abused and taken advantage of. You're competing for developers. Those developers are going to go want to work at a place that they feel comfortable, they feel safe, they feel welcomed, they feel supported. If you can't provide that to them, your game quality is going to suffer. Your product features are going to suffer. Your playability is going to suffer. Your brand name is going to become shit. So it is notable that in their competition section, they say nothing about keeping the developers happy. In a lot of these things, sometimes it's more about what they don't say than about what they say. I guess that's a common element here. All right, intellectual property. So if you're unfamiliar with the term, intellectual property is things that you own that are not physical property, right? Like desks, chairs, real estate, that sort of thing, right? If I own some sort of intellectual property, I have to have some sort of right to that property, or I have to have protected it. So trade secrets are an intellectual property, but you have to keep them secret yourself. Then there are copyrighted things, basically things that you've written down and recorded that other folks aren't allowed to copy. Trademarks, which are brands that you use in trade. It's like Activision's name, Blizzard's name. Those things are trademarks. And then you've got patents. So patents are ideas that you can use to patents, a little bit more unusual. Patents are like business processes that you can use to make something, build something, do something, and those things are protected for a limited amount of time by the government. And during the time that you have the patent, you have the restricted rights to use that patent, and you can restrict others from doing that thing. These are like sort of colloquial ways of explaining these. If you're interested in learning different types of intellectual property, definitely go and look those things up. I don't know if I did a very good job of it, but there are differences between each of these things, and most companies that are of the size of Activision Blizzard will have all of those things. It's likely they have trade secrets, although we may not know what they are. They do disclose that here. They have technology and trade secrets. Then they will have, typically they will also have patents. Okay, let's see. So software code can be copyrighted to a certain extent. They'll have patented technology. They'll have trade secrets. Trade secrets are things that can't be protected through patent or copyright, and so you have to keep them secret. You can't tell anybody. It's like a famous version of this is the recipe for Pepsi or the recipe for Coca-Cola, neither of which I invest in. So a trade secret would be like the exact amount of sugar and water and other ingredients that get put into those sodas. If someone actually found out what those things were, they would be able to copy it. So the recipe is the trade secret. It's not illegal for other people to make that same recipe, right? It's not illegal. So they keep it secret. Only a limited number of people are supposed to know at any given time, I guess. And they probably keep it in some like vault somewhere. I don't know. I don't know how they keep these things secret. I don't care. Okay. So I like that they develop the majority of their products based on wholly owned intellectual properties like Call of Duty, World of Warcraft, and Candy Crush. So they own the marks on those universe-wide. They own the characters and the things that they've written about it. They have copyrights on and trademarks on. That's great. They own it all. That means they can make movies. They can make games. They can make physical things like T-shirts and cups and toys and whatever, right? They can make comic books. They can do anything that they want with these, or they can license it out to others to make those things. And then other times they have intellectual property that they get through licenses and service agreements with other companies, where the other company would be the owner. So then they're talking about playing on other platforms, yada, yada, yada. We already discussed this. They might have renewal rights on those licenses, and they may not. They need to be able to get those rights so they can continue to use those platforms. Again, we talked about that above. So chances of them renewing on those platforms are pretty darn good. So I don't see those things going away. They're actively engaged in enforcement of copyright, trademark, patent, and trade secret rights against infringers. Okay, this is actually important. They're noting this for a legal reason. If you are not actively engaged in the enforcement of those things, you can lose the rights. Or it's not that they go away exactly as much as courts can stop. The courts can assume, or you may lose some ability to defend those things in court because the court's like, well, you didn't defend it before. Maybe that means that you didn't actually think it was important, and so they don't give you as much respect for those things that you're trying to take later. But there are issues with the conflicts between that legal side of it and the side of particularly gaming, where people like to game through Twitch or YouTube and try to showcase gameplay, right? So they monitor online channels for distribution of pirated copies, and they enforce that. But I don't know how much they actually enforce their rights, say to their music or to their games visuals online. So if I was to go out and stream StarCraft, like thousands of people do every day, stream my gameplay, they probably wouldn't come after me. And that's good from a human being standpoint, from an ethical standpoint, I would say. But interestingly, it can have a negative effect, because if you later try to enforce something like that, it can be a problem. So I think all gaming companies are trying to kind of navigate this, and I think Nintendo, who I don't invest in, I think they take a bit of a harder line, and they don't let people let people use their content as much. But Activision Blizzard, I know Blizzard does. I know that Call of Duty folks stream all the time, so they're very much allowing that to happen. That doesn't mean that people have those rights by default. It just means that it's not being kind of patrolled by Activision Blizzard, which I'm okay with. I'm okay with that. It's actually good because it's free marketing for them, right? Free marketing. And then they're talking a little bit about DRM here, digital rights management, how they put restrictions on their software so that only the person who buys it can use it. I'm okay with that. I know some people have problems with it, but I don't see any issues with it. Human capital. All right. Human capital. What does that even mean? What is human capital? We believe our success and growth are related to our ability to attract, retain, and develop top talent. Okay, so they've got their talent thing here instead of up in competition. So, all right. They have about 9,500 employees, approximately 65% in North America, 30% in Europe, Middle East, and Africa, EMEA region, and approximately 5% in Asia Pacific. Of those employees, about 61% focus on game and technology development, which represents an approximate 3% increase from 2019. They take an active role in their life cycle from candidate to alumni. Let's see what's going on here. They're focused on attracting, recruiting, enabling, developing, and retaining a diverse and innovative employee population. Are you really? Okay, so talk is cheap. Talk is cheap. That's all I'm going to say about that. I've gone off on it enough. All right, so D, E, and I. Let's see. What are they working on? They believe this. All right, so let's... All right. A couple of things that I'm going to talk about here. As we go through this, I'm going to look for actions, activities that they're doing, things, initiatives, systems they have in place. What I'm not going to be doing is like worrying too much about the things that they say are important to them. It's great. If you say that's important to you, that's fantastic. What are you doing about it? What are you planning to do about it? Let's look at the future. Let's see what's going on. All right, so what do they got? They got growth and objectives. They're committed to building. Great. They're embedding DE&I practices and programs. What are those programs? All right, so they have employee resource groups. I'm familiar with employee resource groups. These, all right, I'll talk about those in a moment. They're building community and awareness. All right, so it's important to note that employee resource groups are often not run by the company themselves. They're enabled by the company. The company says, "Hey, you can use our space or whatever," and they may even have some high-level support. I was part of an ERG at my former employer, and it was basically an internal group where you could go and do some activities, hang out with other folks who are interested in a certain culture. And that it's helpful, especially if you're trying to find people to make you feel like you're at home, to find other folks who are like you, have the same challenges as you, to find contacts who might be willing to help you out, who do not have the same challenges as you, but who are open to, learning about that culture. So important to have, I think, but these are very limited in their scope. They can't do much on their own. Very often they are just support groups. Think of it as like a support group for folks who are pissed off. They can go there to kvetch, but they can't effect change. So they offer leadership and management development opportunities on unconscious bias and inclusive leadership. Okay, so they do some trainings. A lot of companies are doing trainings right now. I like to joke that these trainings, like sexual assault training, is like basically teaches you how to do it, how to do the thing, how to sexually assault someone, how to be a jerk. They teach you a lot of the ways that these things happen. And so if you haven't done it before, after you attend one of these trainings, you know what the strategies are. Not great. Not great. It also teaches folks how to keep an eye on it, but again, a training class isn't enough. And then train the workforce in diverse sourcing strategies. This is vague. I don't know what these strategies might be. It's important to know what these things are. So there are different ways you can source a diverse workforce. Some of them are better than others. Some of them are more effective than others. I would be interested in knowing what these are. These may be quote unquote trade secrets, but it ain't a secret if it's ineffective. If it's ineffective, it's just useless. Like nobody cares. Nobody cares if your secret doesn't actually have results. So I'd be interested in knowing what your strategies are. Tell me more. Because it doesn't seem like the results are really there right now with current allegations the way they are. and with the statistics in the gaming industry that you are one of the major parts of as far as representation. So, yeah, I want to know more. This is not enough. And it doesn't seem like there's like a plan going on here. I don't know. Okay, corporate governance principles, initial list for any new independent director. No. Oh, so they're talking about new independent directors for the board, I'm assuming. Okay, so this is really important, actually. Their corporate governance policy says that the initial list for any new independent director nominee must have qualified female and racially or ethnically diverse candidates. And same thing for a CEO. The initial list of external candidates must have that. Oh, interesting. External candidates. Only external candidates have to be like that, not internal candidates. And independent director nominees, not company director nominees. So they don't have these requirements for internal hires or internal board members. And so the end result of this policy is that 2 of their 10 directors are women. 20%. 2 out of 10. In case you didn't know, the world population, last I checked, was about 51% women, just a little bit over 50% women, and about 49% men. Very, very close to 50-50, statistically speaking. I would hope that eventually we get to a situation where it is unusual to find a company that is not at least 60-40 one way or the other. You're always going to have some variation when you have a small group of people, like only 10 people on a board or only, 16 people on a board, something like that. It's always going to be a little shifted one way or the other because you can't perfectly always get 50-50 female-male representation. But it is striking when only 2 of your 10 directors are women. Consider adding more people to your board. And statistically speaking, this is how... all right. I'm going to get on my soapbox a second here as an analyst and as a sort of progressive person. If you are trying to change something that you have a problem with, you need to spend a period of time steering that direction. As an analyst, I know for a statistical likelihood to occur, you need to make it to be more than, 50%. Right? If it's just 50-50, you have an equal chance of going one way or the other. So let's say that you have 10 board directors and you want to get to a 50-50 representational split between men and women. If your initial list of nominees for a new board director, say you're replacing one of your existing ones, so you're down to 9. Let's say you've managed to retain those 2 women and now you have 7 men and 1 woman. It is statistically 50-50 if your initial list includes 4 women and 4 men. But if you have a 50-50 chance of that next slot being filled by a woman. If you want to correct the problem and your problem is you have not got enough women on your board already, you need to make it statistically more likely that that new board position will be filled by a woman. You need to put more than 50% women in that list of nominees. You need to pack it so that you actually are trying to correct for your issue. Because for years, for decades, you've been packing your board of nominees with men. You've been packing it, right? So you have to overcorrect the other direction for at least a little while until you get to the point where you're stable. You know, where you've got 4 women on the board at least, I would say. 4, 5, 6 women on the board, I think would be reasonable. You're not going to get there if you're just, let's say I've got 10 folks on the list, and I definitely have 1 woman on the list. I definitely have 1 person of color on the list. I have 1 black person on the list. You're never going to get to a representational board when the majority of your board candidates are white guys. You're just never going to get there. And board members turnover so infrequently. You really need to correct the ship on this. So this is not enough. This is not enough. Includes qualified female and racially diverse candidates. Which I guess means that there is a plural here, so I guess that means at least 2. I don't know what their requirements are for it. And it may be illegal for them to say how many. It may be illegal for them to say, hey, we're creating some sort of quota for this. But in the real world, you need to fix this somehow. And one of the ways you can do it legally is by including qualifications in your review of these candidates that they understand various different customer bases, because they have deep experience with those things, right? That seems to me like it would be very legal and very helpful to you, right? And it really does help your business. How are you going to attract women gamers if your board doesn't have people who understand women? How are you going to understand black gaming culture if you don't have anyone on your board who's black? You're waving your hands in the air going, I don't know what to do. Hiring for diversity is very important. To do that, you need to change your qualifications. Okay. And you need to turn over some of those board members or increase the board. Have they said anything about that? I don't know. They might hide that down below, but it doesn't look like they're saying anything about it. All right, comp and benefits. Okay. Oh, wait. Let's see. They're 2 consecutive years as best place to work for LGBTQ equality. Congratulations. That's good. by the Human Rights Campaign's Foundation Corporate Quality Index. Very nice. Okay. Well, I wonder if he'll be there this year. We'll see. Compensation and benefits. Again, this is not a plan. This is a recognition. So I don't see a plan here. I don't see a plan. I see a employee resource group. I see some trainings. I see some board and CEO candidate qualification changes, maybe. But I don't see them changing their CEO because the CEO manages the CEO Bobby Kotick. Doesn't he own significant amount of shares? I just don't see him going anywhere, and I see him choosing his own successor most likely. But I mean, if not in, yeah, I think both the chairman and the CEO have controlling interest and would basically decide who this person is going to be. So, if they wanted it to be a woman, it could. Do they? And it doesn't matter what the qualifications are if the CEO is not going anywhere, if the board members aren't going anywhere, if they don't have term limits or anything. It's not going to happen. So just if you see something like this, just know that's bullshit. If it's unlikely for these things to turn over very often, it's just going to be very, very slow slog. If they said hey, we're committed to getting more women on the board, we're going to expand the board until we get 50-50, I'd be like, oh, well, that's an action you can take. You can keep expanding the board and you can try to hire more folks, get up to a place where you've got good representation, and then boom, you're good to go. But a lot of these companies, they don't want to do that. They like how their control works. They don't want to give up control. So it's this constant back and forth of, oh, we have this policy in place. Well, that policy never actually comes into practice, does it? I would be curious as to when the last time was they turned over a board member and who was added at that point. Okay, let's look at compensation. Okay, it's challenging, so they want to compensate people well. All right, so they're linking compensation to overall company and business unit performance and individual contributions. There's nothing special about that. Although I guess some companies just don't give you much of a bonus if the company does well. I don't know what this means monetarily for them. They're very vague here. Emphasis on company performance is aligning their interests with the interests of shareholders. Okay, but I don't know by how much or why. They're seeking fairness in total compensation by reference to external comparisons, internal comparisons, and relationship between development and non-development, as well as management and non-management remuneration. I've got words. Haha. We believe in equal pay for equal work, and so this is code word for we don't pay women less than men for equal work. Again, I have words. And we continue to make efforts across our global organization to promote equal pay practices. Okay, let's keep going. Let's see what they're really talking about here. Comprehensive benefits. Benefits for healthier families, secure lives. They offer medical insurance, prescription drug benefits, dental insurance, vision insurance, hospital indemnity insurance, accident insurance, critical illness insurance, life insurance, disability insurance, health savings accounts, flexible spending accounts. They offer what seems like a full package. They don't say that they offer this in all of their markets. They say that they are wide-ranging benefits, and these are examples of them. So my guess is that they offer all of these things to folks in the United States, and that they may not offer a complete package everywhere else in the world. They upgrade their benefit portfolio with modern experiences. I don't know what that means. So onset of COVID-19, they got people access to medical advice and created an enterprise-wide global network of physicians, which they talked about up above in their shareholder letter. So this is a lot of blah, blah, blah. Let's talk about what they're not saying. Okay. So there's some code words in here that I want to call out, and I'm going to call them out, but I could be calling out any number of other companies. Maybe 99% of publicly traded companies do stuff like this. So it's not, don't feel bad, folks at Activision Blizzard. If anyone ever listens to my podcast, it's not just you who do these bad things. It's lots of other folks. So, fairness in total compensation. They seek fairness in total compensation. So, fairness is an emotional concept, right? And fairness is determined by both our laws and sort of just, how people imagine they should be paid for particular kinds of work, right? So we work in a capitalistic society. Some people are going to get paid more than others because demand for particular types of skills is going to be different for other types of skills. That's not to say in any way that one type of job is more or less difficult than others. It's just that we as a society will value things more than other things. And that seems to work better than trying to do things in a more socialized or communistic fashion for the most part in most industries, particularly an industry like this where it's sort of optional whether you want to work for it or not. So I don't have a huge problem with people getting paid more than others based off of skills that they have acquired, that they have trained themselves for. That I'm okay with. But then we talk about things like external comparisons. Everybody's got their own definition of fairness. Some people base their fairness off of what other people are doing, how other people are seeing themselves, and internal comparisons, right? So I have a bit of a problem with these things because lately there has been a push among some employers to do things like have you go work from home, but then the employer paying you less. This has happened in some industries that I've been reading about. It bothers me because when you work from home, you're footing the bill for all kinds of different things. You're cleaning your own toilets, you're taking care of yourself, you're making your own meals, all those things that the employer might be paying for at work, you're taking care of on your own. You're probably paying for your own internet service. You're probably, you're probably paying for your own chair. There's all kinds of stuff that you would have in the office that you now have to have at home so that you can do your work that is not necessarily being paid for by your employer. Is it yours? Yeah, it is, but it's also kind of like a 50-50 kind of work thing. Is it for work? Is it for you? It kind of is both, right? So a lot of times by working at home, you're saving your employer money. So then for them to come to you and say, hey, we're going to pay you less for the convenience of you working at home, that's a slap in the face because the employer is already saving money on you. I think I've talked about this before, above, so, or in my previous videos, so I'm not going to go too much into that. But there's one other thing I wanted to point out here. There are a lot of companies, and my old company was one of them, who will pay you less depending on where you work regionally. So if you work, say, in Indiana versus Ohio versus California versus the Bay Area in California versus Los Angeles in California versus Redding, California, which is more rural, right? There's these cities, there's rural areas, there are people who are like in the middle of everything, and they tier these groups for pay. That's what they did at my old company. I bet they do this at Activision Blizzard as well, although probably they're more centralized with the way that their folks work. They probably, most of them right now probably all work in centralized locations, like Santa Monica, I think, is where one of their main places is in the United States, in California. So they don't have probably a whole lot of folks who are working, say, from Redding, for example. But if I live and work in Redding and I do the same thing as a person who lives and works in Santa Monica, I do not feel it is fair for me to get paid less because I live in a more rural community where I'm essentially taking a hit. I'm trying to, save money. Maybe I'm trying to save money for my family. Maybe I like to live there because it's a more comfortable location for me culturally, or maybe it's where my family lives or whatever. But I'm still an important part of that work team. Why would I get paid significantly differently from a person who is working in a city? Why? Functionally, there's no difference to the business. In terms of the profit I can generate for the business, it's no different. That person who works in the city, maybe they can get to more meetings sometimes than me. But I can be there via Zoom, especially now. I invest in Zoom, by the way, just so you know. Or I can call in. Like, there's no reason why in today's market, these folks who live in more distant locations should necessarily be paid significantly less or differently from folks who can do similar work to them. And so these external comparisons and internal comparisons, they're all based on the idea that I can use other companies' practices to determine how much I pay my own people. Try to find the lowest amount I can pay my people. I don't like that. I feel like you should pay people well, and these comparisons, I guess they're important in terms of, making sure that you're paying enough, but there doesn't seem to be anything in here about making sure people are paid well enough that they want to continue and stay and be developed. It also looks like they're paying people more if they're on development teams than they are if they're not on development teams. But again, they don't say that. So they just say there's a relationship, but they don't say who gets paid more, who gets paid less. And then management and non-management. Oh, and this is where I get very frustrated. Just because you're a manager doesn't mean you should get paid more. Why? Why is that a thing? I mean, everyone assumes it, right? When I worked in finance, everyone assumed the managers got paid more. I think my managers got paid more, although I never really had an explicit conversation with them about it. I know that as an individual contributor, I got paid more than some managers, but they weren't in my line of business, right? So there's people all over the pay scale, right? And some individual contributors will get paid more than, In one side of the business, we'll get paid more than managers in another side of the business. But I know this is really complex, and that there are a lot of facets that go into producing a proper pay sort of situation. But I like the idea that they focus on equal pay practices and promote them, but like, what does that actually mean? Give me some statistics. Tell me what you're trying to do. Telling me all this, it just makes me wary. It makes me cautious. It makes me worried that this is not actually doing good. That you're making your decisions based off of, are you development? Are you not development? Are you management? Are you non-management? You fall into these buckets and then you get paid a certain amount. To some extent, you want to do that, maybe to be establish grounds of fairness for folks, so that you're not hitting a situation where you're paying people based off of skin color, based off of gender, based off of whatever other excluded, legally excluded or unethical reason, right? To some extent, you want to do that, I guess. But even within it, I question the fairness. Like, why would someone in management get paid more or less necessarily than non-management? Why is that a thing? Is it always true? Should it always be true? Why would someone who works in development get paid more or less than someone in non-development necessarily? Is that a thing? Is that real? Maybe I work in marketing. Do I get paid more? Do I get paid less? What if I work in merchandising? Does anyone even work in merchandising? I don't know. That's not even clear from this. Oh boy. Okay. So, and then they've got benefits. Okay. And talent assessment. So let's move on. Constantly changing. Diverse and innovative talent base is important. Really? Is it? All right. So diverse, yes. Important. Innovative? Is it really important to be innovative if your entire business is based off of taking existing franchises and just making them over and over and over again? Is an innovative person going to come work at your company if that's where you're focusing? If you're not developing new franchises, if you're not developing new systems, if you're making yet another Call of Duty game, if you're making another Candy Crush with different colors and different candy, I don't even know. I'm making it up now. But I'm wondering, what is innovative about that? Will these people who are coming on feel like they're actually innovating? I don't know. Okay, blah, blah, blah. Talent assessment, blah, blah, blah. Succession planning, blah, blah, blah. Performance management has goals. Looks like they have a yearly goal system and then regular checkups. Oh, those are such a drag. Okay. They regularly assess employee contributions to our company results and culture so they can reward and recognize. Okay. Annually, they conduct an organization and performance review with the CEO and all the segment managers, business managers, function leaders. This sounds like table stakes, minimal, I don't see anything new or interesting here. I like that they have an annual performance review process of the segment lines and the business function units, but I wonder what that really means and what they do with it. It doesn't say anything good or bad about them, I don't think. I feel like a lot of companies do that sort of thing. Employee experience. So they have company-wide pulse surveys. So they're looking for honest, candid feedback. The survey rates are 75% or higher. That's good. They get actionable steps from them. So we did this at the company I worked at, and it was really difficult to take action on these surveys. And a lot of times I think the survey was done and then they would forget about what was inside of it. And it wasn't really taken care of at the top level. It wasn't respected enough for them to do to make big changes. For example, I think that we had these pockets of problems that we had identified from our surveys, but then we would do these sort of mediocre little steps to try to make adjustments. But it was very often driven by lower level team members and not by upper level ones, and it was very often not well funded. And then some of the things that I would have issues with, for example, not having the resources I needed to do my job, would cascade. So the fact that I didn't have the resources to do my job would mean that I would have to work harder to make things for other people so they could do theirs, because people were depending on me to make my products internally so they could do their work. And so if I did my job well, it concealed the fact that I wasn't getting the support I needed. And so those folks who depended on me, they still got what they needed, but I didn't have what I did. So I had these sort of stumbling blocks in front of me. And when I left, I kind of wonder what happened to all that stuff. My guess is that a lot of it would have fallen down, but that would have been hidden by these surveys, right? So if you see one person who's got a 1 out of 10 for I get what I need to do my job, and then the other people that work for them are all high, you got to kind of ask yourself, well, why is that one person like so having such a different experience than everyone else? And you could see from these sort of outlier human beings, these outlier team members, that there actually were these sort of problems that were not, that they were sort of isolating the problems and trying to contain the problems. I know other people who were doing this as well. They were trying to contain the problems in their little area, deal with them so that they didn't explode, right? You got to squeeze the balloon down so it's not taking up too much space. Keep it underwater, otherwise it's going to pop up. You're constantly fighting yesterday's battle because no one's committed to dealing with actually fixing the thing, because it would take money, and sometimes a lot of money, to make those fixes. Okay, so yeah, just because you have actionable steps doesn't mean you're actually going to do those. It's good that they're doing the survey, but I don't know what they've done for it. Okay, let's look at their executive officers. Robert, Daniel, Dennis, Claudine, and Christopher. And Robert, Chief Executive Officer, why is he twice here? So you got a 57-year-old, 52-year-old, 50-year-old, 52-year-old, 54-year-old. Looks like a broad diversity of probably male 50-year-olds. And their chief people officer is a woman. That's actually not unusual to have your person in HR be female. Typically, your diversity and inclusion person will be black, female, or both. And then your HR person will be a woman, and then your marketing person might also be a woman. But a lot of times your finance person, your VP, your CEO, your legal officers, these are going to be guys. That doesn't have to be the way it is. Just going to say it. It doesn't have to be the way it is. It also bothers me that all these folks are of similar ages. I get that someone in their 60s probably doesn't want to take on this kind of responsibility, but I think there's some opportunity for folks in their 40s. You're probably not going to hire a 30-year-old to do these things if you're just hiring somebody. And I don't know how long Robert Kotick has been doing this. I think for a while now. Oh yeah, since February 1991. So he would have been quite a bit younger when he started. Quite a bit younger. Okay, so Activision Blizzard director since February 1991, following purchase of significant interest in the company, which was almost insolvent. Let's see. It looks like it took over at that point. So this is just explaining like what other things he does. That's fine. This is all fine. So Daniel Allegre came from Google. Daniel Allegre is president and COO of Activision Blizzard at the time of this. Now, I believe he has been let go. I believe this person has been let go. I want to check on that. Let me check on that on my other screen. Just a sec. Oh, you know what? It wasn't them. It wasn't that person. I think. Yeah, it wasn't this person. Yeah, Daniel Allegre, it looks like, is still signing things as COO. Okay. BMG Latin America, Woodrow Wilson School of Public and International Affairs at Princeton, Harvard Business School and Harvard Law School. Okay. Dennis Durkin, CFO, Microsoft. Dartmouth and Harvard. Looks like there's a Harvard connection in here. Claudine Naughton, Chief People Officer. I'm assuming this is an HR position, probably head of HR or something like that. Yeah, so Human Resources Department of American International Group. or AIG, Regional Manager and Director of Training for Fairways Golf, a BA degree in Poli-Sci from Stockton University. Okay. Thank you for not being from Harvard. Christopher Walther, Chief Legal Officer. So JD from University of Kentucky College of Law. Degree in History and Spanish from Center College, and Procter & Gamble, looks like, with some international experience. Alliance for Children's Rights. That's cool. Okay. So, skip through this. Looks like we're done with item 1 business. Cool. I'm going to wrap it for today since we're about at an hour and a half right now. Because I want to dig into risk factors. I have a different view on risk than most people do, and so I was interested in looking at these risk factors in depth. And I think we could take an entire episode to look at all of these. Let's see, how long is this? Wow, many pages. Yeah, let's take an episode and look into risk factors. So that's going to be later this week. That's my plan anyway. Wow. Okay. So this is page 13. All right. And we're going to get into business and industry risks next time. Thank you for hanging out and researching Activision Blizzard along with me. Much appreciated. If you enjoyed my content, if you enjoyed my voice, if I help you fall asleep, if you want to hear more from me, subscribe and like this content, because that way I know you appreciate me. Hey everybody, have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time on the Lazy Paddler Investor Show. Bye.